So you've been in the middle of giving your husband a second chance. Maybe he had an affair, was involved in porn, was addicted to something. You confronted him. He asked for another try with you. And you granted that. You are engaged in the second chance. But you woke up this morning and you found something that made you realize he's not making good use of that second chance. He's done it again. Whatever the it is. He's done it again. Now what? I'm Dr. Lenne Hunt with the Marriage Recovery Center, and that's a question I hear a lot of. You may have watched a series that I filmed recently. It was a 4-part series that looked at the processes involved in restoring a marriage. And in that, I talked about the need for true repentance, for forgiveness, for the rebuilding of trust, and for gaining vision for the new relationship that you're going to form. I think that series has spawned a lot of these questions. Questions that are aimed at, what do I do about things that go wrong in the trust rebuilding phase of things? So I want to talk a little bit about that today. Just to make sure you've got the stage set in case you haven't listened to that series. What we're assuming at this point is that there's been some real repentance at some point in the past, that your spouse has come to you and in humility, in honesty and transparency, has come and owned to you what they've done. They've done that with specificity. They've done it with clarity. They've owned what they've done and the effect of that on you. And they've asked you to forgive them. And you've been willing to do that. You've been willing to cancel the debt that they owe you by virtue of the ways that they've hurt you. And you've offered this second chance. A chance for them to prove themselves trustworthy. Because that's the theme of trust rebuilding. That we have to prove the repentance that we've talked about. Because in the beginning, repentance is just words. I'm sorry. I know that I hurt you. But I'm sorry is not enough. You can't just say I'm sorry. You have to do I'm sorry. And the doing of it takes time. Trust is not quickly regained. It can be quickly lost, but it's not quickly regained, especially when the betrayal is a substantial one. When there's been significant harm done to your heart, to the relationship. So one of the really important things to know about the trust rebuilding phase is that when there's a relapse into the bad behavior again, it's not like it's one of those, whoops, I did it again, my bad, let's just keep going kind of moments. It doesn't work like that. Re-injury has a more significant effect than the initial injury, because it creates two problems. It opens the initial wound again. So there's, emotional hemorrhage all over again. But it also further damages the trust issue. I think I think a lot of spouses don't get that. They want to dismiss or take lightly re-injury. They want to chalk it up to being merely human. Everyone gets it wrong sometimes. And that's true. We do get it wrong sometimes. The path to forging a new us, rarely is without hiccups. But that doesn't mean that those hiccups don't have a lot of power. They do. They are powerful in the damage that they create. They speak again the original injury, that your heart doesn't matter, that you aren't significant to me, that I have affection or allegiance to people or things other than you, above you, more than you. They speak that all over again. And they speak that I'll continue to be hidden in my life with you. Not just will I hurt you, but I'll hurt you in secret. I'll hide it from you. It's a whole other kind of betrayal. It's very different to be working on repairing trust, to get something wrong, to know that you've gotten it wrong, and to come immediately, voluntarily to the person you've wronged and say, I see I did this. I did this again. I know how bad that is. I know that damages what I'm trying to rebuild with you. It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to reoffend, to relapse, and to be hidden in it, so that the other person has to find you out. Much greater injury in that. There's an extra burden on the person who's trying to restore trust, for them to be trustworthy. There's much less wiggle room here than there would be if the betrayal never happened. You can't afford to play fast and loose when you're trying to regain another person's trust. You need to err on the side of big caution. So let's say, for example, that the issue is an affair. Your spouse cheated on you. And is working on you trusting them again. The goal would then be for you to be as far away from cheating as it's possible to be. To be perfectly transparent about your social interactions. To be transparent about your thought life around that. To be so above board that you don't give any room for worry to your spouse. Rather than seeing how close you can get to the danger line without going over. Those have two very different feels to them. So if you're the injured party, if you're the one who's granted forgiveness and you've granted the second chance, and now that's been betrayed, they've done it again. You have some choices here. While it's true, from a scriptural point of view, that there's a press to forgive them 7 times, 70 times, right? Forgiving them over and over is different than giving them second chances over and over. Forgiveness is clearing a debt It's not an obligation to remain. If a person is proving themselves not to be trustworthy, and that's really what we're talking about here when there's re-injury. In a relapse, in a re-injury, I prove one more time that I am not yet different than I was. And that speaks a clear message that you can't trust me in this, at least not yet. So the wounded party has decisions to make about how long they extend those chances. It doesn't have to be indefinite. There can be a point when you look at the accumulated data and what it suggests is a continuous pattern of relapse, a continuous pattern of reverting back to the behavior that so damaged your heart. If that's a cyclical pattern, and if there's no data to suggest that the good behavior is going to last beyond just its normal cycle, then you're going to have to be willing to hear that you may be involved with someone who in truth is not committed to restoring trust. They're really not committed to the process of change, and that this is perhaps the best you can expect from them. And now your heart has to deal with that truth. You have to make decisions about whether or not you can live with that. So that's one of the things that you're going to have to wrestle through when there's been a reoffense, when there's been a relapse. Part of how you do that, I think, rests on how your spouse deals with their relapse. As I said before, there's quite a difference between them voluntarily coming to you, owning it, as opposed to forcing you to catch them in it. One of those speaks a much more hopeful theme than the other one does. That's important data in this trust rebuilding phase. If what you're meeting in your spouse is this ongoing attitude of resistance to taking responsibility, resistance to transparency, honesty, openness, then this is in serious trouble. That data doesn't support the view that anything is being restored here. Rather, it supports the view that the same old is what you're going to get again. I know that's probably not what you want to hear. Nobody wants to give up hope for change. And change is possible. I mean, I honestly believe that marriages can be restored. If. And there's an if, right? It's a heart issue. A heart of humility, a heart of surrender, a broken and contrite heart. Genuinely broken and contrite. I mean, that's a beautiful basis for restoration. But to be committed to pride or getting it right, being right, looking good, control, getting your own way, to be committed to those things rather than real restitution, reparation. It just doesn't bode well. I'm going to say something kind of hard to those of you who are in the wounded position here. And that is that you're going to have to be pretty firm about your boundaries, about what you're willing to allow, and how often you're willing to allow it. Because ultimately this goes back to that truth that I hate, which is that we teach people how to treat us. And we teach them that by what we allow, by what we're willing to endure. It's okay to say that your heart matters. It should matter. It should matter to your spouse most of all. If there's ever a place to expect your heart to matter, it would be with that person. I admit that this is sort of complicated. There are a lot of practical parts to what should I do when I catch him again. What kind of conversation to have, when to have it. What lines to draw. And I don't want to present that there's sort of a cookie cutter, one size fits all answer to this, because there's not. But what I can say is that I would be more than happy to talk with you about the specifics of your situation, to help you look at the realities of your data, and to help you think through what your heart can live with and what it can't. So consider this an invitation. If you'd like to have that conversation, all you have to do is reach out to the client care team and they'd be more than happy to set you up to see me. And I would really be honored to do that with you. Thanks for tuning in today. Until next time.